In His name be He glorified, and there is nothing but it glorifies Him with praise. Peace be upon you, and God's mercy and blessings forever and ever. My dear, loyal brothers and young heroes of the Risale-i Nur. Firstly, I congratulate you with my whole life and spirit on your wonderful work with the Risale-i Nur in a place like Ankara. Truly, in a way far surpassing our hopes, you have been the means of a significant awakening amongst the educators and students of the secular schools. The work you have achieved in 1 year in Ankara could only have been done in 10. You should be content with this duty you have performed for belief and the Qur'an in a short time, and not allow your moral to be broken by unimportant incidents. Indeed, they should spur you on to work even harder. Your service in such places at a time around 20 political and social currents from home and abroad are clashing boastfully and maliciously, and the university students are flocking appreciatively to the Risale-i Nur, pleases all the Nurjus enormously, just as in the future it will please the Islamic world, God willing. The rewards are abundant for your small service. Sometimes 1 hour's watch in the army under severe conditions may be the equivalent of a year's worship. Similarly, your service and the Istanbul University Nurjus have performed many duties in a short time. Even if the fruits of your efforts are few, be content with them. If some weak persons retreat from the front in war, it arouses even greater heroism in the brave. So, if some nervous people withdraw, it should drive the devotees of the Risale-i Nur to greater efforts and resolution, and to work with even more enthusiasm. Yes, you have learned instinctively an important truth of the Risale-i Nur, and you should still keep it in mind. It is this: our duty is to serve belief and the Qur'an sincerely. It is God's business to give us success and induce the people to accept it and to dispel opponents. We may not interfere in this. Even if we are defeated, it should not damage our moral or lessen our service. We have to be resigned on this point. For example, one time they said to Celaleddin Harzemshah, a great champion of Islam, "You will be victorious over Genghis." He replied, "Our duty is to wage jihad. To give us victory is God's business. I can't interfere in that." Your unshakable, sincere service up to now indicates that you have followed that champion. You should remain unshaken even if only 1 or 2 people out of 1,000 accept you. Sometimes 1 or 2 are the equivalent of 1,000. Secondly, these days, attention in Ankara is excessively turned towards this world. Those in power have not found the time to accept this principle entirely. Numerous parties, of course, work very hard to find supporters or to hide their mistakes. And some of the currents abroad which are opposed to Islam and the Qur'an have found some people here by means of whom, with propaganda aimed at making those who work seriously for religion nervous or give it up, they cause consternation to any who are not truly devoted or who are attached to this world or to too many friends, and they try to break the Nurjus moral. Said Nursi. My dear, loyal, and blessed brothers, firstly, I have received both the Madrasat al-Zahra's victories produced from the Risale-i Nur, of which I was in great need, and the collections the heroic Tahiri sent in the name of his late wife and 2 daughters, and 2 weeks ago the most timely complete letters of Mustafa, a worthy successor of the late Hafiz Ali, and the blessed collection written in his own hand by the Risale-i Nur's strong commander, Rafat Bey, and his letter describing his wonderful and meaningful dream. I was indeed pleased. May Almighty God bestow on all of you 1,000 merits for every single letter you have written, and may He bestow endless mercy on the spirits and graves of the late Hatice, the late Hijrat, and the late Aisha. Amin. Secondly, I was very pleased that, as stated in Mustafa Osman's letter, who is a second Husrev, a brother called Sabri wants to come here to serve me. I accept him as though he had come and served for a few months, but at the moment there is no need for anyone to come here from other places. When there is need, I shall let him know. In truth, young heroes resembling the Sparta champions are beginning to emerge in the region of Eflani. Thirdly, contrarily to my rule, I have accepted the gift of fresh grapes sent by the old established Nur scribe and student, Katib Osman, from the Risale-i Nur garden, and the most auspicious gifts from Sava, a leading branch and center of the Madrasat Zahra. Whoever I offer them to, I will do so for their merit. Fourthly, I had written out in a notebook the most important parts of all the letters the Nur hero Husrev wrote to me while I was in Emirdağ, and particularly the parts containing summaries of the letters I had written. But someone fancied it while I was in prison, and they took it and it got lost. I still have around 40 of his letters. I am going to mark them, God willing, and if I can't have them copied out here, I will send them to you. They can be put together in a notebook and, owing to their importance, perhaps be duplicated. Fifthly, I have sent 15 copies of the words collection to Ankara. They were very useful. The Nurjus there are working heroically behind the screen of caution. Sixthly, I have corrected letters which you do not have and which Husrev wants. I shall send it with someone. This time, I realized that the 24th letter is very valuable, very subtle, very profound, and absolutely true. I send merry greetings to everyone. The enduring one, he is the enduring one, Said Nursi. My dear, loyal, and blessed brothers, firstly, our brother, the Ennoble Husrev Nazif Çelebi, wrote to me and asked what would be appropriate to publish after finishing the Hizb-i Nuriye and Salawat. If you agree, I think it would best to publish the treatises for the sick and for the elderly from the Flesh's collection, the short letter of condolence for a child, which is the 17th letter, and the short letter about serving the elderly. But if the Madrasat Zahra members deem it necessary, they can correct or excise any sentence or passage they think fit, and they may add to this any other short treatise. Send Nazif a reply in this vein quickly. That brothers publishing together the Jevshan el-Kebir and the Salawat of the Hizb-i Nuriye is a considerable service for the Nurjus and the believers. May Almighty God bestow on him and his assistants 1,000 merits for every single letter. Amin. Secondly, the new government slowly understands that true power resides in the Qur'an and that they may withstand the destructive enemies to Islamic brotherhood and the truth of belief. Sometimes a single destructive person may cause alarm to 20 repairers and may sometimes root them. It is not material forces or external and internal policies and pacts that, when the 20 million Muslims here are quite simply in a situation of defeat, will help the assaults against them of a force that made West China submit to itself. It is only the Qur'an and truth of the belief forming a barrier against that force's destruction of the sensibilities of the heart, that force's greatest strength, and curing their spiritual wants. The education minister of the new government has evidently felt this fact, for, contrarily to his predecessors, he is giving greater importance to religious instruction and the spirit of the truth of belief. Even the newspapers have reported that 200,000 liras have been earmarked for a university in the East, called by them the University of the East, attaching considerable importance to it. Both Ankara and Istanbul universities have certainly grasped the above-mentioned fact, and that it is the truth of the Qur'an and belief that will save both the country and the youth from that awesome, destructive force. For the Ankara students presented a letter with 1,700 signatures congratulating the education minister on his including religious instruction in the compulsory schools. And in Istanbul University, they told one of the leading members of the new government that in Anatolia there is a powerful current of support for religion, and he replied that they will allow few opportunities to both that current and the leftists. So, the university representative told the government leader, despite his being opposed to religious publications, if the current you are referring to is the Risale-i Nur, neither yourself nor Europe will be able to defeat it. In connection with this matter, although it is opposed to my way and temperament, I say the following, donning for a minute or two the head of the old Said. There is nothing between belief and unbelief. There can be nothing in this country between communism and Islam and its struggle against it. Right and left and center means three ways. It is fair enough if the English or French say this, they can say Islam on the right, communism on the left, and Christianity in the center. But in this country, there can be no other religion or sect besides Islam and belief and its struggle against absolute unbelief. For no true Muslims can ever become Jews or Christians. At the very most, they lose religion completely and become anarchists. God willing, like the education and justice ministers, the other leading members of the government will fully understand this fact. In place of the terms right and left, they will rely on the power of the Qur'an and believe and strive to save the country from absolute disbelief, anarchy, and atheism and their awesome destruction. We beseech this with our whole life and spirit from divine mercy and hope for it. A couple of weeks ago, eRisale, one of the leading professors of Al-Azhar University in Cairo, sent a man here. Similarly, 2 days ago, a prominent scholar came to visit me who is originally from Bukhara and lives in Medina and has connections with leading scholars in Egypt and particularly with our former Shaykhul Islam and my friend in the Darul Hikmet, Mustafa Sabri Efendi. He had told them that he was coming here and in a way came in their name. I gave him as a gift for Al-Azhar University 11 copies of my personal collections and sent them with him to that principal school of the Islamic world, which, as he said, now has 27,000 students. And I told him that foremost Mustafa Sabri and eRisale and Mehmet Zahid Kevseri should take up those collections from the Risale-i Nur in my place and protect and inherit them and try to have them translated into Arabic. I also wrote a letter. The scholar took them and departed. I sent greetings to all my brothers and sisters and request their prayers. The enduring one, he is the enduring one, your brother, Said Nursi. Firstly, endless thanks that now, in what has the meaning of a small nurse school in Ankara, young Saids and devotees of the Risale-i Nur read one of the collections of the Risale-i Nur every evening. One person reads and the others listen and take lessons. Some high-ranking persons also attend when, on some occasions, there are conferences. In connection with the slanders of the Afyon journalist, some deputies told the Prime Minister and Interior Ministry and said to the Nur students that Adnan Menderes and the Interior Minister had responded in a friendly manner and sent word that they, the students, should not worry or lose hope. The journalist in Afyon then evidently said that he was going to go to Emirdağ because he had 2 things to ask of our master and that he was going to request this and offer an apology. My students bought 160 copies of the newspaper which was published against us and destroyed them. I was going to write some more, but I have cut it short due to my indisposition and have only a little time. I send greetings to everyone. Just like the Sparta heroes, Eflani and Safranbolu work continuously. In fact, this time the invocation was missing from some of the copies of a guide for youth. In a very short time, Eflani wrote out 70 copies of it in the old letters and sent them to me. So we added them to the end of the guide. God willing, many sungurs are appearing there and will appear. And adding them to the defense speech. You can send a petition to the justice-loving Democrats in the following vein. I am ill, so write it in whatever way you deem appropriate. The letter we received yesterday from our lawyer states that in a way that conforms with no law, they have made a pretext of one single word out of thousands, and with the idea of vindictively preventing the spirit of the Risale-i Nur, said it constitutes an offense and have not returned that treatise. Although, according to the decision of the appeal court, which totally quashed their decision, what they showed to be an offense was not against us, and although we proved decisively the 80 errors in the public prosecutor's indictment and his malice, now, with the same malice they have stated that a few lines about Islamic dress and inheritance in the 400-page Zulfikar collection that were written 30 or 40 years ago, about which 100,000 Qur'anic commentaries have said the same things, constitute an offense, and they have confiscated the work and refused to return it. Is there any law in the world that would permit this? Also, with the exception of 2 short pieces about reputation in the Qur'an and the angels, all the works held by Afyon Court have been acquitted by both Denizli Court and Ankara Criminal Court, having been investigated for 2 years, and the same works were all returned to their owners by the Sparta authorities after having been seized at some time. Then, Zulfikar and the Staff of Moses were confiscated and held for 4 years on the pretext that they were published in the old script without permission, and all 170 copies of the collections were returned to us with no losses because they could find nothing reprehensible in them. And what they showed to be our most serious offense, our objecting in the name of truth to some of the leaders of the former party, are now being reiterated 100 times more violently in the official newspapers and religious journals. Whereas a confidential piece of the Risale-i Nur proved when expounding a truth that specifically pinpointed the present that it was a dead leader. Although that it is the truth, the judges' panel in Afyon Court stated at the end of its decision, which was also written in the old script, not in the name of justice, but out of bigoted love of that dead man, and chiefly due to the prosecutor's malice, Said and his friends called Mustafa Kemal a wrecker of religion and the Sufyan, and they have tried to destroy the people's love for him. That's why we are convicting them. Could there be a public trial for such a criticism of a person who is dead and gone, even if it were 1,000 times stronger? To give such a judgment in a court of justice surely means that there is some other matter at hand. Although the books of the Risale-i Nur that such people are holding have 4 times been acquitted, and the present Interior Minister and former Justice Minister have 3 times ruled for their acquittal and stated that they contain nothing reprehensible, and that with their quashing of the Afyon decision to convict us, they contain nothing constituting an offense. Now, at the time the whole nation awaits justice, compassion, and service of religion from the Democrat governments, to leave the Risale-i Nur to the arbitrary whims of the evil intentions due to the machinations of the former despots is grievous treachery towards the Democrat government and destroys the nation's hopes of consolation. My deputy in Ankara is Mustafa Sungur. He gave the good news in the telegraph he sent on 17 November 1950 that the decision had been taken to return all the parts of the Risale-i Nur to us. So, although the Justice Minister has 3 times acquitted them, and now according to Sungur's letter, orders have been given for their return, Afyon Court is collecting all the slanderous reports and denunciations of 16 years as well as the records of the Denizli and Eskişehir trials, and with the announcement of the amnesty and the court acquittals, is mixing up those blessed works and those reports and records in order to refute them, and is depositing them all in its store. The affairs of the Risale-i Nur should not be left to the devices of those persons who have deceived us these last 3 years. I am presenting this most important matter for the attention of the Prime Minister, Minister of Education, and Interior Minister, Said Nursi. Private Secretariat, the Vatican. Number 2322447, 22 February 1951. Dear Sir, your fine handwritten work Zülfikar has been presented to His Holiness the Pope, having been sent by means of Papal Nuncious Office in Istanbul. His Holiness states that he is most touched by your kind gift and entreats Almighty God for His blessings upon you. I offer my deepest respects. Chief Secretary of the Vatican. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, I congratulate you with all my life and spirit on the month of Rajab and the 3 months, and I beseech Almighty God that these months will be the means of winning for you and for me an everlasting life of 80 years. Amen. Secondly, for the last 30 to 40 days, as a sort of assault on the believers and 3 religiously minded deputies, a general upset has been caused in order to hinder the restoration of the merits of Islam. They found the Nurjus to be the most powerful of those working for the cause of belief, so many cunning plans were laid on false pretexts in order to induce them to be neglectful and to dampen their enthusiasm. They wanted with these extraordinary intrigues in Emirdağ, as in Tarsus and Istanbul, to anger me and incite a disturbance. But through the grace of God, I was given extraordinary patience and forbearance. Their plans were completely thwarted. There is the possibility even that 3 high-ranking officials here and in Afyon will be dismissed, and the 3 deputies put in a good word for us. That is to say, divine providence protects us as ever. All praise be to God. Don't be anxious about things like this, but it is advisable to always be cautious. Thirdly, the hero Ahmet Feyzi, who may be counted the Risale-i Nur's lawyer, is involved with the duplicating of the Risale-i Nur in Izmir and with the general awakening there, and has undertaken to do the corrections. Bayram, who in prison was a young Nur hero, brought me a letter describing how the brothers who are helping him there, like Mehmet Yayla and Abdurrahman, are continuing their involvement with the duplicating. Ahmet Feyzi sent some olives and olive oil with Bayram. Although I did not accept my own brother Abdülmecit's gift, I was obliged to accept Ahmet Feyzi's, since I look on him as even closer to me than my brother. But, so as not to break my rule, in return, you sent to him on my account 1 words collection, 5 Cevşen el-Kebirs, and 3 Hizb-i Nuriyas, which belonged to me, as Nazif mentioned in his letter, and which will be sent to you from Istanbul. 2 Nurjus have gone to Ankara. The Prime Minister, the Interior Minister, and the Minister of Education all support us. We received the good news, so don't worry about us. I feel a spiritual joy at the difficulties we suffer. Part of Sayyid Salih's letter. In his name be he glorified. This year, 15 students will go to the Hijaz together. The Hijaz will pay all their expenses there. On their return, Salih and 2 of his friends will attend the Islamic Youth Conference in Pakistan as members after traveling through Iran and other countries. The government may pay for their expenses. We await your orders concerning this matter. Abdurrahim Zapsu saw Ali Akbar Shah and Said Ramazan. They were treated with great respect in Pakistan. Their hands were kissed in place of our masters, and your prayers were requested. Sayyid Salih. Firstly, I inquire after your health. I kiss your hands and feet and pray to Almighty God for your health and well-being and await your prayers, for which I am in great need. Secondly, there is nothing to worry about here now. The anxiety on the 5th of March was dispelled on the 18th of April. The police station became a nurse station. The Tarsus public prosecutor, having studied the books, ordered that they should be returned. The chief inspector told me to go to Mersin to get the books that were there so they could all be returned together. The police in Mersin said that they had sent all the books to Ankara and they would give them to me if they were returned, but that there were none there. So I went back to the inspector in Tarsus. He was very apologetic and said that they only act under orders and that they could not return them without receiving the orders. Then, on 18th April, they said that the books had arrived and that we should go and get them. I went immediately. I understood from the paper in which they were wrapped that 5 of our books, Zulfikar, the ratifying stamp of the unseen, the mysterious collection, your Afyon defense speeches, and the Hulasa had arrived, having been sent from Ankara. They handed over the books to us with a note saying that they contain nothing to prevent their sale. I gave the chief inspector a copy of the mysterious collection and the police chief a copy of the Hulasa and the biography in the new letters. They were both very pleased. Both have become nervous. My master, you told me that my duty lay in this region. I gave my word, and when I left Sparta I said that I would come in March. But my spirit tells me that I have not fully accomplished my duty since I was unable to reach Gaziantep and Marash. My master, a year before I went to Eskişehir, 3 or 4 months after I first visited you, I had a dream in which you, my master, came to our house. You asked me, if I send you somewhere, will you go? I replied, of course I will. You told me, I am going to send you somewhere for 3 months. I immediately set off and you told me, stop. I stopped. You asked, did I tell you to go now? I woke up then, and ever since I have been wondering, is it for this year that he gave me that order to make the 3 months journey? Day and night I wept. That is to say, it was destined to happen now. This is from the bounty of my Lord. My master, I kiss your hands and feet longingly and with respect. Your most faithful servant, Süleyman Kaya. 21 April 1951.